Welcome to Wednesday, December 24th. It's Christmas Eve 2025. Your Day with a Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, yes, it's going to be a brown Christmas, and even if Jerry went out and got himself a brand new fancy snow attachment there to get ready for the upcoming big winter season. Well, there's not even a scratch on that thing yet. Well, Jerry, it is going to be a brown Christmas. Some of you in the far west will have some white, and we may actually have a little bit of white this weekend. We'll talk about that here in a minute as we got this big West Coast storm, which is a bit of an anomaly. We're going to talk about this West Coast storm in perspective of where we are with La Nina and El Nino in a moment here. The winds are going to pick up a little bit over the next few days. Nothing like the last 2 weeks, nothing. But we will have a bit more wind as this West Coast storm system starts to move a bit. We will have in the wind gaps a little bit more in the way of wind. Along and west of the divide, it's going to be a cool, wet Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Warm and dry and brown east of the Continental Divide. It will be noticeably colder this weekend, especially Sunday into Monday. Actually, Sunday and Monday for areas along and east of the divide, it actually will feel like winter for a little bit. There's also going to be some high country snow with the leftovers of the Pacific storm, the pieces of it as it comes on through. We've got a La Nina update for you, and also we're going to add on to the discussion we had yesterday about the blocking pattern analogs. What I showed you yesterday were a couple of seasons that were analogs to what's happening now. But what I didn't show you yesterday is what actually happened those seasons with the blocking pattern as we went through the winter and early spring months. And we'll take a look at that. Here's another out of whack photo. What is going on? This is just crazy. Speaking of crazy, this reminds me of the X-Files TV show. Beautiful contrails there with the low angle sun. It's at its lowest angle right now. Really continuing to put on a display of beautiful cloudscapes, whether it's contrails or just these high and mid-level clouds and all these lenticulars that we've got going on. Just beautiful evening and morning skies out there. A lot of cloudiness coming in with this California storm, as we showed you yesterday. A strong, moist fetch of subtropical air from the lower latitudes getting driven into California with this southerly flow. Now, when you get into December and January and February, you usually have these strong atmospheric rivers come in at an angle from the west. Not this time. It's all coming up from the south. You can really see that there on the water vapor. So the east-west part of California here along the coastal regions, obviously when it hits the higher terrain, whether it's the coastal ranges or the Sierras, you're going to be getting very heavy precipitation. And radar, as of early this morning, is showing the heavy rain in the southern parts of California. Look at the showers coming into southern Arizona. Yep, parts of Arizona will have more winter weather this Christmas weekend than many other parts of the region. And you can see all the advisories in effect for California, for the Great Basin, whether it's the green there in the flooding or the pink for winter storm warnings in the higher elevations. We do have winter weather advisories for some of Wyoming and Montana's mountains, Utah's mountains, even southwest mountains of Utah as the storm comes on in. This is the wind I was talking about picking up a little bit, making it a little bit more windy in the wind gaps. Wanted to show you, let me go back here. You know, a lot of times we just ignore this down here in Alaska, but Alaska has been going through a lot of extremely cold winter weather. And kind of a rule of thumb, if Alaska is really, really cold and stormy, a lot of times the western United States is not, which has been the case. I wanted to show you these temperatures as of around midnight mountain time in eastern Alaska, then up into the Yukon and Northwest Territories. These are in Fahrenheit. These are not wind chill temperatures. These are measured temperatures, not even the coldest temperatures. But here we go again. We've got this. We had this a week and a half ago where there's extreme cold. I mean, yes, this is the part of the world you expect it to be cold, but these are anomalies that are as much as 30 degrees or more. And some of that cold air will affect the United States early next week. So there's the elongated low along the west coast, the big high dominating a lot of the nation here. This is tomorrow. So today, tomorrow, you can see the east-west extent of the low is just, It's just barely moving. But it is getting a little bit of a nudge on Christmas Day. Then by Saturday, we have the splitting trough coming on through and the remains of the storm getting pushed through the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains. This guy right here is going to take a dive south and is going to take some of that cold air I just showed you and transport it southeast. So here we go again. Another ejection of Arctic air into the north central and central United States. So for the next 48 hours, today through sundown Christmas Day, there's your precipitation along and west of the divide. You can see that the moisture is getting a little bit closer. So Wyoming's western mountains, the northern mountains of Utah finally getting some snow again, and you can see the heavy precipitation there in California. So this takes us through today and tomorrow. Snow levels very high in all this warm Pacific air. You can see feet of snow will be falling in the Sierra Nevada. Now the next period of time, this is for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So this is for the 72-hour period of Friday through the weekend as the remains of the storm heads eastward. So there is going to be more precipitation. And notice this little tongue of moisture. This is a new little wrinkle. Now, don't know if this is going to happen or not, but I think it's not out of the question that as we get into late Saturday and Sunday, there might actually be a strip, a little bit of light snow out here. We'll see as that front comes through. But you can see it's west of the divide. That's going to get the heavier moisture. And there's that snow forecast for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So some of you might get lucky with a few snow showers, with the mountains faring the best. Wanted to show you this really quick. This is the latest snowpack as of yesterday. Snowpacks up in the far northern Rockies. Anywhere you see green or blue, snowpacks are above average. So you can see Montana, parts of Idaho, northeast Washington, and notice the Wind River and the upper green, the Snake River, and the Yellowstone snowpack all are above average because of this very heavy, wet snow, spring-like snows really, that have been falling in the higher elevations. Now we're going to see a big improvement here and some other improvements that will be taking place here as that California storm heads our way. But this is a bit unusual, as warm as it's been, to have snowpacks that are actually above average at the moment. But snowpacks elsewhere continue to suffer. Now, as we go into Sunday, there's that low heading into the upper Midwest and the Great Plains. That's going to drag some of that cold air from the Northwest Territories and Alaska southward. So as that happens, northwest winds are actually coming in. This is why it's going to get colder. With that colder air pushing in, these are the temperature anomalies by noon Sunday. A strong frontal boundary is going to be going through the southern plains. Really cold air, some sub-zero temperatures here, late Sunday into early Monday for parts of northeastern Montana into the Dakotas. And this cold air will then sweep across the Corn Belt and the Great Lakes early next week. And then you can see the anomalies of extreme cold air in Alaska. So you're actually going to see some colder weather spill in this weekend and into early next week. And the cold gets all the way down into Big Bend country. Look at that. By early next week with the shot of cold coming on through, then we're building up cold again in Alaska by the early parts of next week. So there's actually a little bit of winter weather in the forecast. Briefly wanted to update you on La Nina. There it is. We still have the colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies along the equator there. We still have these warmer temperatures here in the North Pacific. What's unusual about this California storm is you would not expect, now this is not a strong La Nina by any stretch, but you really wouldn't expect a really wet storm in a La Nina pattern hitting California like it is now. That is part of the blocking situation and the blocking pattern that is taking that storm system this way instead of into the Rockies and the Great Basin, even though we've got a La Nina. Does La Nina or El Nino cause the blocking patterns? No. Blocking patterns that are developing are high latitude. Those high latitude blocks are more of a function of the sudden stratospheric warming events we had in November and early December that reconfigured where the cold pockets in the higher latitudes and where the high pressure and low pressure systems formed early in the season to form those blocks. So there's not much of a tropical connection. So it is a little bit of an oddball storm hitting California right now. You just wouldn't expect it. La Nina is going to continue its trek towards going to neutral status as we go into winter with the latest update. And we've seen an erosion with the warmer temperatures along the equator now. Sea surface temperature anomalies are still in the negative range, but we're getting these warming pockets starting to show up. So we continue to see this trend as we get into the new year. I wanted to go back to the blocking pattern we talked about yesterday. We identified this right here as a strong analog based on what we're seeing now, based on what we've seen in the past, with a Greenland block and an Aleutians block, with the Aleutians block really dominating the western United States. But a new block, has formed here over the last week and a half or so in Greenland. So what happened in 2010 and 2011? We're also going to look at 2013 and 14. Well, I think you're going to find this interesting. The precipitation anomaly in December 2010 looks like this. What's happening in California right now? This is really kind of freaky in terms of how strong the anomaly is. Precipitation above average right here. Now, keep in mind, analogs aren't going to tell you exactly the same thing every year. All you want to look at with the analogs is the basic message, the basic trend. The weather doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it will rhyme. So in December 2010, we had a strong precipitation anomaly along the west coast and the Pacific Northwest. Remember the flooding that happened a couple of weeks ago? Then as you get further out into the plains, it certainly has been drier. Look at the temperature anomalies in December 2010. This is where it's quite remarkable that the temperature anomaly in December in 2010 is going to look very close to the temperature anomaly in 2025. Now, we could probably take this colder anomaly a little bit more north and east for this year, obviously, and so it's been warmer out here. Again, not an exact match, but boy, is that a close analog. That's why we picked it. So blocking patterns in the Pacific and in the Atlantic in 2010 and in 2025, and the temperature and the precipitation patterns remarkably similar. So what happened after December 2010? Well, as we got into January, well, we saw the anomaly for precipitation reverse. Anywhere you see white, average precipitation, brown below, the blue and green colors mean above average precipitation. So average precipitation returned to the northern and central Rockies and central plains, while California didn't see the stormy weather as much, especially northern California. Look at temperatures. January temperatures reversed. And notice we've got the colder weather now getting further west of the divide and more cold out into the plains. Little finger here of warmth, but definitely different than what we had in December when we look at that anomaly there to this anomaly there in January. Then we go into February. Average precipitation for the most part. Look at February, how cold it got. Does this mean that February is going to get extremely cold? Because this is extreme cold right here in the western United States. Not necessarily. But a double blocking pattern in December did lead to colder weather eventually in January and February, with precipitation returning to average. Then we get into March. March, we started to see precipitation come back into the Pacific Northwest, below average in the southern plains, average elsewhere. And temperatures in March, well, we see the cold air retreating, very cold up into the northern plains, very warm down here. But you see these patches of blue? That means storm systems were coming through in March 2011. Then in April was a very wet month, especially in the mountains in 2011, and temperatures turned colder again. So the message here is that if we use 2010 and 11 as an analog, there is some indications that when the blocks finally shift or begin to weaken, that winter will arrive. At least it did in the winter of 2010 and 11. In 2013 and 14, this was your December precipitation anomaly. Not a very good match. Temperature match, yes. January, kind of similar to what we had in 2011. And then in February of 14, look at the cold that came in. That's two things that are interesting in the 2013-14 block and the 10 and 11 block. The Februaries were very cold for some of you, especially along and east of the Continental Divide. Precipitation came back in February 2014, especially to the mountains. March temperature anomalies, somewhat similar to 2011. Precipitation, again, somewhat similar. So if we were to take those two analogs and put them together, for you folks who want some winter weather, the analogs show that there is some hope that indeed is going to happen. Don't forget our regional travel forecast. We will have a short Christmas update for you tomorrow morning. In the meantime, have a happy and a very good Christmas Eve and a Merry Christmas Day.